Hey y'all, Justin Carpenter here with Wandering Toward Truth. I just wanted to take a moment and share some interesting information that you might not have seen. So bear with me. I'm going to be doing some screen sharing, first upload, doing that kind of stuff. So bear with me. But here we go. So first, go to your browser, and if you want to follow along, search engine of your choice. And what we're looking for is the CDC COVID death count. And what we're looking for is this provisional death count, which is basically where they store all of the active information from the CDC's perspective on how many on the coronavirus. And this one specifically is looking at the provisional death count week over week. Um, and it needs to be noted that throughout all of this, there have been countless examples of reasons why this information has been overreported, from categorizing, literally, incentivizing hospitals to count something as a COVID death. Monetarily, they're paid more for saying that they had a COVID death, and a lot of hospital administrations, they they advocate for listing COVID as the cause of death, regardless if people really know or not. Like, for example, there was somebody the other week who died of a motorcycle accident, but they decided to list them as dying from COVID, or adding them to the COVID data. So they don't really distinguish between, they even write it here, all deaths involving COVID-19. So this is anyone who's died and they believe they had COVID at the time of death, but not necessarily dying from COVID. Regardless, this is the what a lot of decisions are based off of. What's the CDC reporting? So we're just going to take a look. We're going to take this information at face value. I think we could sit here and pick apart the data all day long, but let's just take it at face value and see what we're looking at. So here we're showing week over week, um, death count. And you can see, if you've been following on Instagram, and if you're not, feel free to follow along, Justin Carpenter 3. But I've been showing that since April, April 18th, week, we've seen a consistent trend in death count that's going downward. We're seeing it continue to lower, the rates declining, and you never hear about that on the mainstream press. They're always talking about cases and cases and cases and cases, as if that's the only measure of looking at the risk of this thing. When in reality, risk is concerning death, right? Like that's what we should really be focusing on. And deaths have been declining, which should be reason to celebrate, but they don't really want us to celebrate. But anyway, so this is the chart that you can clearly see that, and just by looking at it. But if we want to visualize it a little better, I just want to show you how you can do that too. Um, so click this button to download, and it'll bring you up to this sort of tool. And then what we want to do is create a visualization. So scroll down and create visualization. And this takes so no thanks, we don't need to save it. Takes the active data and allows you to kind of demonstrate it in different ways. So what we want to do is we want to set the x-axis as end week. So you can see that right here, end week is the x-axis. And then what we want to measure are COVID-19 deaths every week, with the sum being, the sum of the total for that particular week. But you can see by default, it doesn't show the whole data set. So what we need to do is we've got a couple options. We can group it by month. So do that. And here each data point is a whole month total. So you can see within this data that from April onward, we've seen a decline month over month. Now July is incomplete, but you can still see that we're basically going to have to double the amount within the remaining week double the amount that we've already got in July, and they're, oh yeah, more than double the amount to surpass that rate of decline, which I don't think is very likely given the trend onward. So that's one way to look at it, or we can go back to automatic and select this scale to fit chart area. And it's a little bit harder to see this way, but you can see each data point. So each of these dots is one of those data points from the chart that we looked at before. And here, if you imagine a line connecting them all, you can clearly see that from April 18th, like I said, and onward, we're seeing a sharp decline. Again, the most recent week is not going to be absolutely complete in data, but the overall trend is very clear to see. And I just wanted to kind of show that because there's anytime this information is presented, it's never talked about in a rate. It's talked about as a cumulative, these are the number of deaths that we've had, but rate is really important because that indicates how much is this virus really affecting us week over week on a daily basis, and how much has that declined over time. And this should really be reason to celebrate. We've had months now where we've been declining, yet the mainstream press still continues to focus only on the aspects that make it seem scary. They focus on the cases, and they don't really talk about how if we're testing more people, we're going to see more cases. I mean, that's just a given. And, like testing is one thing. I guess it's important to figure out like where it is, but it's the main conversation around risk it was always about how likely is this going to kill you? How likely are you to die from this? That's the reason for the initial fear and wanting to protect people. But if we're seeing that people are dying less and less from this, and cases are actually going up, that means more people have had this, and so tested positive doesn't necessarily mean they're sick with it in that moment, but they're not dying from it. Not nearly at the rate that we were seeing back in April and March, which again is never talked about. It's never discussed. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. Just wanted to draw attention to that. Keep an eye on this data, because the mainstream press, they really don't want you to see that. Um, and it yeah, just it exaggerates the fear that people get from this thing when they're not given all the information. So stop relying on, I mean, I'd really invite you to stop relying on those in the press to provide you information. Get the information yourself. And this is one source. There are plenty of others. But they all indicate the same thing globally. We all see a decline in countries across the board, but especially in the U.S., which is where I'm at and where I have the most look into. So yeah, just wanted to share that. If you have any questions or curious about how I got there or what I did, please feel free to either comment or reach out. Happy to share and talk about this. But yeah, just sharing a little bit more truth on the matter. Yeah, love you guys. Bye.